Hey, I'm Jackie. I went to Bangor High School and the University of Maine. In high school, I did not like English class. I considered myself bad at English, but a necessary evil. I basically just did it for the grades. When I got to college, things changed a lot. I took my first class. Was actually given by a lawyer, and we had a big first paper, and I had the highest grade out of the entire class. And I was like, what is this? I'm bad at writing. And she's like, no, you're not. It's just the style of writing. And so I found that technical writing was a lot different than the type of writing that I've been doing all through high school. And that was the type of writing that I actually leaned toward. So now I actually like writing, and it's a good thing because, as Ben said, we do a lot of it. We are problem solvers, but we have to write pretty much everything we do. I never really had a light bulb moment, other than the light bulb moment when I found out that I did not like writing. Yeah, as far as the literature, film, and theater, that you might not think is important. Like my big one was the Odyssey. I had to read it twice, once in high school and once in college. I'd say even though it seems like you'd never use it, it's one of those things that everybody seems to read for some reason or another, and as a result, it's just part of American culture, and it does offhandedly get mentioned metaphor too. So if you don't know what they're making a metaphor to, then it doesn't really help. So some of those pieces are actually necessary. That's about all I have to say.
All right, so my name is Matt Burns. I graduated from Coney High School, and then went to the University of Maine for civil engineering as well. My kind of recollection of English class was that we got these book reports, read the book, wrote up our report, and it was just kind of a way to, it was a place where we could kind of give our interpretation of the book, and I didn't really connect the dots beyond that. I wrote the report, hoped for a good grade, and then kind of moved on, and it didn't really click with me at the time that this was a means through which you can actually communicate to people and give them something, and hopefully in return get something that you're looking for as well. So when our job is getting work and getting paid. So I think connecting those dots kind of made me realize that I need to pay a little bit more attention in English class, and that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. So I guess once I got to college, we had to take 3 different technical writing classes, and that was kind of a good location to transfer those English class skills of literature and things that you don't think apply to science and engineering into a more applicable venue, really honing your skills in terms of technical writing and getting what you want. And what Ben had said, the company just brought a bunch of us to a technical writing seminar Tuesday. I think that kind of shows how much value companies put on technical writing. If they're willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars to train their employees, then it must be worth it. I guess one of the other things in English class in high school, you can write up your report and you have as much time and as much space as you want. That's not really the case here. You're given a very finite amount of time in which you have to write up a report and get your point across. And the report that you're giving to these clients, they're not terribly interested in it, so you need to make your point quickly. They're going to read a page if you're lucky and skip through the other 20 or 30 pages. So you need to get to the point and effectively communicate what you want to while still maintaining their interest. So I think that's kind of something that has been eye-opening for me, transitioning to the working world from the academic world, and something that I think is a good skill to have. So, in terms of literature, film, and theater, I ended up taking German classes in high school and then stuck with it in college, and ended up getting a degree in it. And I had the opportunity to live in Germany and Austria and essentially learn another language, and that's been really helpful for me too. Knowing the German language and how it's constructed and all the rules that go into it has helped me understand the English language a lot better. It kind of gives me an outside perspective when I'm writing to look back on and say, okay, would a foreign person reading this understand what I'm writing? And if they can, then I hope it's written, well. If I don't think they can understand it, then probably my client can't understand it and it needs to be rewritten. So if you have a chance to learn another language or do anything like that, I think that can be very helpful as well. So that's all I've got. Turn it over to Steph.
Sure. My name is Stephanie Pepper, and I'm a little further from out of college, I think, than a few others here, but I guess just to kind of, I went to high school in Brunswick and actually went to a very technical-based college, Worcester Polytech down in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I had a little bit of a different start. I grew up, I enjoyed English. I enjoyed the English classes, although my strength was more in the technical and the science and engineering-based type stuff. I did have a sister who was big into literacy, and so we had some decent conversations with regards to kind of the differences of our opinions and what we wanted to do. But like I said, I went to a very technical college. It was mostly engineers, scientists based, and there was not a lot of emphasis put on taking English courses and or writing courses, but I ended up with a very good professor and advisor who said the most important thing that you can do is to take a technical writing course. And at first I was like, well, I'm just not going to need that as much. I've got a pretty decent base from high school, and I ended up taking the course and taking another course following that, finding out after talking with a few individuals as I was trying to decide where my career was going to go, that having that information and being able to write efficiently and effectively was going to be a big part of the work that I was going to be doing. And so I think there were a lot of good points, and I certainly don't want to re-say those, but I really learned on my first day at the job that I was going to be communicating, and a lot of that would be written communication. And so just to kind of give everybody a couple of examples of what we do on a typical basis, I think Ben said it, we do 50% writing, and the other 50% might be design, meetings, stuff like that. But you take a project from start to finish, we're writing a proposal, trying to engage and tell the clients what we want to do for them. Following that, there's always a good amount of communication. We get into preliminary design reports and preliminary engineering reports, which are basically us communicating and telling the clients how we want to, what we want to do and how we're going to help them solve their problems. We start getting into the design of it, and there's a significant amount of communication, not only to the client, but to possibly residents in the area that we're working in, permitting agencies, different authorities that are out there that we're working with, and trying to effectively tell them what we're going to do, how we're going to do that, and how the process is going to happen. And so not only are we trying to do that, but we're looking at a whole range of people with very different backgrounds. And I think that's something that I never anticipated, was that we have to be able to communicate to a whole bunch of different peoples that might not maybe understand as technical as we get in some of our reports, but that we want them to understand how the project is going to work, what the construction is going to be. And so following that, we really will get into kind of the construction documents, which include some pretty substantial specifications, which we're telling a contractor how we want them to construct the project at the end. And then we get into communication during the construction phase a lot, which is if things come up and changes need to be made, is that we're communicating that to that whole realm of people that I kind of talked before. The owner, the other engineers that might be reviewing us, residents in the area, the contractor. So we have to engage and utilize communication. I say communication, but also very well documented records, and certainly writing is on our list daily. I did take technical writing when I first came out of college. And that was one of the things at my first job that they really were kind of hounding us on and saying, we've got to, and we had a bunch of different sessions, and it certainly, technical writing is much different than your typical English class writing, but I think having those communication skills is certainly necessary in this field and not something I might have known before I necessarily came into this. So, I think that's it.
Okay. I'm Kathy Mishu. I'm an architectural designer with Ray Pierce. I graduated from MDI High School, and I have a Bachelor of Art in Architecture from UMA. So I'm a little bit different than everyone else in here. I'm outnumbered by all the engineers at being an architect. So, but the path is very similar. I probably had the same mentality as Ben in high school. Absolutely hated English. Every time you had a 10-page paper to write, I was lucky to get 5 pages, and it was always marked up, to expand and do more. And I never felt like I had any more to say. I just wanted everything concise and to the point, and wanted to do as little as possible. And then when you get to college, it's more writing. And even going for an architecture degree, there's a lot. You spend so much of your time doing design, and everything's sketches and drawing and art-based, and you're trying to communicate your thoughts that way, but you still have to write the 30-page thesis paper to go with that project. And even though you're trying to communicate using every other method, you can't get out of the writing portion of it. And part of that I learned, though, was it comes back to the technical writing. And then there's so much in writing when you're writing in high school and in college, and your audience is your teacher, who is the smart one that knows what you're trying to do, and you just need to please them. But when you're writing and you're trying to communicate to an audience that you're trying to sell on your project, or you're trying to sell the community on the project, you just have to really tailor your writing to that audience. And you either dial back the technical and try to be persuasive and convincing. And being a terrible speller, you really need to make sure that you have people proofreading, because you could very much persuade someone to the wrong thing if you're not careful. But and aside from that, I'd say the most writing that I've actually gravitated towards now through communication is email, which can be dangerous because, again, once it's out there, and you may only be trying to communicate to one person, and it gets spread around to everybody else. But I would say that even more than 50% of my day is now writing, probably more in the lines of 75%. Every set of drawings that we send out to get constructed, it may have 60 drawings in it, and it's going to have hundreds of pages of specifications. And before that even came along, it had hundreds of pages of proposals and reports and everything that goes along with that. I don't know what else to say. I think I'll pass it off to Matt. We're probably getting a little redundant. Mike, sorry. Matt's over there, Mike's over here.
All right, yeah, I'm Mike Sweat. I graduated from Old Town High School, and I went to UMaine for engineering as well. I would say my perception of the value of an English class probably echoes a lot of people here. Might not have put 2 and 2 together the relevance of English in what I was doing. However, I think technical writing it's been on my radar for a long time, and I think probably a lot of you guys see it more than you think. I mean, in your science classes and maybe even math classes, you probably have to do reports on different more technical things. So I guess, as you're doing that in high school and moving forward in college, try to think about, things that you learn in English class regarding, say, sentence structures and spelling, grammar, things like that. Think about how they can transition into the technical writing that you do. Because you definitely, even moving forward in college, if you go into something like engineering, you'll have your freshman English class, and you have to do more of the creative type of writing there. But you know, try to get the most benefit out of it as you can, and think about how you can gear it towards the more technical stuff that you do. Because really, I saw it all the way through with science and math classes in high school, through college, and then on to graduate school. Where actually to get into grad school, a big part of that was taking a test where you were given a prompt and then 30 minutes to write a certain amount about the prompt. So it was really, I think having some technical writing background was helpful there, because I was able to recognize what they were asking and turn that immediately into a response. I think like a lot of these guys, like I said, even going into engineering, didn't quite realize how much writing was a part of the message that we convey in our design. So definitely it's some information that you get on the job is on the job training. Yeah, so that was somewhat of a learning curve there in coming on the job and realizing what was expected. I guess probably, Jason, you want to jump in here?
Come on in, Jason.
Yes, so, can everyone see me? Hiding in the shadows back
I
here?
like private.
Here's
Yeah.
the camera.
Does anyone have any questions?
Here's the camera.
Do you guys have any questions so far?
Yes.
I think I actually have a, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
clearly. I'm closer.
I have a question, and someone asked me a very important question at the beginning of class. We just had an assignment about a Shakespeare task, right? It was about Hamlet, actually. And the paper had a lot of specifications, meaning that they had to write about certain aspects of Aristotle, certain aspects of tragedy, and in any way, can a very formulaic paper like that relate to something like an RFP or a proposal where you have to follow very specific guidelines for the way you write and what you write about?
Want me to take?
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times when we get RFPs, and or even helping communities or clients put out RFPs, there are very specific items that they're going to want to see to help evaluate the work that we're doing. And so it could be experience, it could be kind of projects that you've completed, it could be project team based. So there's a lot that really goes into it. And again, I think somebody brought this up earlier, is that, you know, they might put restrictions and limitations on how much information you can provide, how many pages that it can be. And so we're trying to follow those really strict kind of very well laid out guidelines and explain to people that we have the capabilities of doing this work, that we've done this work before, and that we have, you know, a team put together that's going to complete the project that they're working on. So we run into this on a daily, if not multiple times a day, is having to do that very thing, which is be very detailed in our analysis and give them the best information that we can in the shortest amount of words, basically. So, does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What about another question, you guys?
Are there different technical writing courses? Like, is there just a course called technical writing that deals with, you know, more facts-based writing as opposed to English class, or are there like scientific writing, engineering writing, you know, things like that? It really depends on what college you're going to, but I went to Orono, they had a bunch of different types of technical writing and a bunch of different levels. You could take I took a technical writing course through the English department, but
I had to take a technical writing course through through the engineering department as well. So going to depend on the school, but it is a skill that is valued and very useful. So they've made a lot of courses for it.
How specific of a technical writing course would you recommend? Like, if
Can you hear that question?
you're
Yeah.
sorry.
How specific of a technical writing course can you take?
Yeah, like could I make do with a general writing course, or would it be a lot better if I took the time to go into like technical writing 2, technical writing 3, for example?
We're getting some feedback or something. Yeah.
What the hell is that?
The general writing course is going to have a lot of benefits just in how you write. Are you writing with correct grammar? Are you organizing your sentences correctly? Are you having passive versus active sentences? Technical writing course is going to help you kind of reorganize your thoughts. So I'd say there's really a benefit to both. It's just a matter of, I mean, when you're going to school, if you're going to go to college, how much can you get out of that education? How much do you want to learn while you're at school? You want to learn as much as you can, so that when you get into getting a job, you're as far ahead as you can be. You don't have to make up time. So it's really kind of figuring out and balancing out what you can get the most benefit from. I'd say both courses would probably be good to go to. I like the technical writing course more as an engineer. And if you're going to go specifically into one area and they have a technical writing course for that area, then it would make sense to go into it. But if you're not sure which area you want to go into yet, it might make sense to take a more general technical writing course.
All right, thank you.
Lily?
Do you think it's easier to write about stuff other than literature?
Can you hear
Did
that
you hear that
question?
one?
Stephen, can you ask it louder?
I think it's easier to write about stuff other than literature.
The question is it easier to write about technical and professional material than it is to write about literature and art and things of that nature?
I think that really depends on the audience. It can be very difficult to try to write technically to convey your point, especially if you have a very broad audience. Sometimes you're trying to communicate something to a public forum that you know nothing about these people and what their knowledge of the topic is. So you really have to balance how technical and how layman term you persuade them into something. But
You have to
that's
know
my
your
perception.
subject
Is you
matter
really have to,
in this case.
yeah, I think you really have to evaluate the situation. It can be challenging.
I think it can be challenging, in fact, as you said, like bringing it down a level or whatever, but it can be easier in the fact that hopefully you really understand what you're writing about, while as literature sometimes you're like trying to figure out what the writer was saying, whatnot, and so you don't fully understand, not necessarily, you're trying to figure it out for yourself, and while hopefully technically you know what you're writing about fully, so that can help.
Absolutely. What else, you guys? Other questions? I have a lot of questions, but hopefully, did you find that when you guys were hired, you hit the ground running with writing? Like there wasn't much forgiveness and, oh, that's okay, you're new. We'll let you take a year to come up to speed.
Actually, as part of the interview process, like after I sat down and talked with the people interviewing me, they asked for a writing sample before they would hire me. So, they wanted to make sure, they wanted to know up front if I could write or not. They were expecting me to come in as a technical writer rather than really learn how to do it on the job. So yeah, pretty high expectations there.
Yeah, I had the same experience as Mike, where I had to send in a writing sample during the interview process, and then once I was hired, I think maybe day 2, I was told that I was going to be writing an operations and maintenance manual, which I think most people here have probably done. So it's basically a document telling someone how to run a wastewater treatment plant. That can be about this thick. So yeah, that was day 2. So you really hit the ground running.
Yeah, it's kind of a rite of passage that people hold on to their operation and maintenance manual that they have to have written until they hire a new person, and then that's the first job that you get. So there's
Definitely lots of expectation that you will be writing immediately.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I had to send in a writing example for an internship that my junior year, I think. So I wasn't even finished college, and for a summer job, I was even required to put in a writing example to get the job.
How many of you know you want to become engineers? Quite a few.
Yeah.
Have you guys discussed curriculum much?
Go ahead.
My name is Jason Powell. I'm a structural engineer here.
Where'd
I
you go to school?
went to the University of Vermont. I was not very focused on English when I was in high school. It was probably one of my least favorite subjects. My SAT scores reflected that. And that was really the kick in the butt that said I'm lacking here and I need to do something about it. At that point, it's kind of too late. And so I went into college and immediately took some Latin and Greek etymology. Probably would have helped with the SAT scores. As far as technical writing, I think it really comes with practice. You can write a 50,000 word paper, but nobody's going to read it. It's too long. And we have some people here who are notorious for writing overly lengthy documents that nobody reads. And time is money. You know, we are paid here hourly, and we can't write documents that take forever to write. They need to be clear. They need to be, take out all the fluff, and but not make it overly technical so that your audience has no clue what you're writing about. In terms of curriculum, the reason why I started on that subject, engineering is very, very demanding. I think you'll see that when you get in school. When I went to UVM, there were 250 people in our freshman class in engineering school, and only 40-something graduated. It's tough. You'll see friends fail out and drop out, and switch degrees. So, you're away from your home, families, nobody's there to supervise you. The teacher really doesn't care if you're in their class or not. They're not like your high school teachers who actually care about you. They don't care. They get paid to teach, and they'll teach to one person or zero, and or 250 in some cases. You can hide and not be seen. You don't pass in homework. So you really have to keep yourself on track. And I saw many friends fail out and drop out, and I'd hate for you guys with great ambition and goals to not be prepared for that. As for writing, you all seem quite intelligent and aware that, or at least now have become aware that writing is quite important. As a structural engineer, there are life safety issues. Every word is scrutinized, and if I have errors, all of my information is conveyed in drawings and text. We've discussed hundreds of pages of specifications that go along with a set of drawings. If that's not clear, then things can result in, we had a case where 3 letters resulted in $100,000 change orders. Let's see. One thing I could
I could add to something Jason was talking about earlier, regarding like being able to write succinctly. I know in class, in middle school, high school, a lot of times the assignments came with like a word count. You had to write a paper that was 5,000 words. In the real world, you're never gonna see that. You're never gonna have to write to that kind of a standard. If anything, on like an RFP, you'll say maximum of X number of pages because we don't want to read a bunch of gobbledygook. So just something to keep in mind as you move into the real world.
One question I have about that's related to both that and what Jason was just saying. Were you ever, when you were in engineering school, given, say, a syllabus with a couple of assignments that were embedded in there? You know, week 3, you need to have a project proposal or something, and then the professor just expects that it's due on that date, and they don't necessarily help you through the process at all?
Yeah, most classes are like that. Either writing or otherwise. It's you get your syllabus at the beginning of the year, and now you know the worst day of college is getting all your syllabus, because now you know all the work that you have to do over the rest of the year. You know, if you have a good professor, they'll normally kind of remind you every once in a while, hey guys, you know, you have that thing coming up, but you're expected to get it done. No one else is holding it to you. If the day comes and goes that you didn't pass it in, sorry, you don't turn in late work. Maybe in some other major, but we didn't have that option to turn in late work. It was either on time or it didn't come in.
No drafts either.
No drafts either. Okay.
And I think there's other pieces to that. I mean, my school had major projects that we had to finish, and those could last up to a half a year's worth of time. And even doing my thesis, and I had nobody sitting there telling me, hey, let's talk about this week. It was, you know, you have to become very focused and saying, okay, I'm going to work through this. Given too much time, we tend to put it off to the last minute, and I think that's just most people. But yeah, you have to set your expectations and try and get it done with everything else going on as well.
So,
The same in
Don't
the
be intimidated. It's like a long, hard road. Yes, but take it one day at a time and stay focused, because the world needs you guys. You're the future.
Well, we really appreciate speaking with you. Do we have more questions, you guys?
I've got one.
Okay,
anyone
Ian
else?
has a question.
Yes.
No? Okay. Speak loud.
How well would you say that your high school English classes prepared you for college?
If I took them seriously, it would have been very well, but I didn't take them seriously or put the effort I needed to into them. Technical writing is kind of another beast, but if you have the core fundamentals, which I didn't have because I didn't put the effort into beforehand, it's a lot easier. Everything builds on itself. Technical writing is just a different way of thinking of how to write. It still follows all the English rules and requirements, just adds on some new ones. So if you put in your time, if you've done a good job on the high school English, you'll probably be in a good place to learn all the new things that you have to learn when you get into your college writing courses.
I agree.
I do. Yes,
And when do you connect those dots? Realize that those experiences are actually linked and connected.
We lost you on that one.
I think it's about connecting the dots, but for me it was, I had a really good advisor in college on my first year who said, you really should, I'm a civil engineer, civil environmental engineer, and so it was very focused, and said, you should add this to your course curriculum. I think some people it comes a little bit later, some people it comes a little bit earlier, but, for me it was really that first few months after getting into college.
Another question? Are you guys aware of any of your peers who are not engineers, who you went to University of Maine with, who studied other areas, who may be doing a lot more professional writing than they had bargained for?
Client-based profession, you're going to see a lot of writing. If that's what you're delivering, even if, in school, you don't really think of that as being what you're offering for a product. I mean, that is the end game, and that requires writing. So I have a lot of friends that are in that boat that have said, yeah, wish I had taken more writing classes.
And public speaking.
And public speaking?
Is there a class for public speaking?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
None of
If there isn't, find one.
And FYI, your writing gets graded even in public speaking. I got a B in public speaking because my outline was not really
What about, one last question, because I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. And one thing I was wondering is, what about editing and do you get edited when you write by your peers? Do you help each other? Do you have a boss who helps you, maybe cuts through things like a teacher would?
Yeah, to some degree. Kind of I don't know if it's our company policy, or at least some of us in one group, they don't want anything going out the door without at least 2 sets of eyes on it.
A lot more we write is read not only by our client, but you have contractors who are trying to build it, state agencies who do it. Everything is a legal binding document, which can, if not written well, can backfire. Who else?
I think the other point that we should probably make is people have different strengths and weaknesses too. And some people are very good at certain aspects of writing, such as specifications. Other people are really good at RFPs and proposals. And, while most of us do everything, we recognize that, we might have a strength in one area and that we certainly want somebody else to weigh in on that. And I think having that coordination and being able to work with your peers is certainly a big key aspect of any project or any company that you're going to work for, or any, career that you want to choose.
We had a question about reading.
Yeah, I'm a writing coach here, but I'm also an English teacher. And one of the things that I was wondering is you're talking about contractors trying to build things and clients needing to have things. How much of your work also requires an awful lot more reading than you anticipated?
Yeah. If you're reading Shakespeare and you're thinking, wow, this doesn't make any sense, it's a lot of fun when you start reading Massachusetts general law on construction or the building code or any of the other technical legal documents that we have to read. And not only do you have to read it, you have to understand it fully. You are going to write a recommendation based off the information in it. So yeah, a lot of reading things that weren't necessarily written that well, or written with legal jargon that you have to not only, hey, I read that document. No, you have to know it all the way through.
When you said you spend maybe 50% of your time writing, you're spending the other 50% of your time reading what other people write. So.
Wow. And more complicated than Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Different sort of company.
Yeah.
There's no footnotes on mass general law.
No. For structural engineering, we have codes for wood, masonry, steel, aluminum, and then building codes, and then each state has their own codes and laws. Each of those is, I don't know, from 100 to 500 pages, and they update them every 2 to 4 years. And those updates aren't just fixing typos, there are some pretty significant changes. So in addition to all of that, we read proposals, we read reports given to us by subcontractors. Like, for example, we have some of our work is done by a third party. We don't design trusses, we don't design geotechnical information. When before we build something, we hire a subcontractor to drill a boring and tell us all about the soil. We read those documents. Yeah, there's a lot of reading.
And even on your own time, there's a lot of journal reading because it's an ever-changing and evolving area, and you want to keep up on what's new and what's out there and what's available, and making sure you understand that.
There's also a requirement for your professional licensing is that you have to do a certain number of hours of continuing education, and a lot of that is reading and learning and keeping up with standards and products, and that's all on top of your work that you get paid for.
And you all enjoy every single one of these tasks, right?
For the most part.
And I think the good and the bad together. There's some things that are not as exciting to get through, but you get through it and you move on to the stuff that, like master. You get through it and get to the stuff that you like.
But I think if you're interested in engineering, you already have an attraction toward that technical, the technical aspects of life.
Yeah.
As opposed to,
Like that.
well, I was thinking more
Creative.
and artsy, but we create all the time.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking the word is abstract.
Yeah.
Towards the technical rather than the abstract,
Yeah,
A little louder.
Like,
Louder.
engineering's based around technical writing, so if you write a proposal, that proposal's assuming that, what is written there is going to be built.
More practical, less abstract.
Abstract is just, it's written for the sake of enjoyment or on the writer's part, written so that they have money next week.
We couldn't hear that.
Oh.
So the point was
Time from the
that engineering writing is more about the practical and less abstract. And so if you're interested in that, it makes it more of a natural fit for you because you're interested in the practice.
Yep.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions for us before we go?
Or things we should have asked.
Or things we should have asked that we didn't ask?
Okay, no, we're doing great about these guys.
I don't think we have anything else. I think good questions, and happy to speak to you guys.
Well, we really value your time, and thank you very, very much for speaking to us. And there is an MBI meet in class. Just so you know. Are you guys related? No.
That's my married name.
Ah, okay.
Go see if you
look like.
All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to Leo.
Thank
Okay.
Nice talking to you.
Bye. Wave goodbye. Bye.
Thank you,
See ya.
guys. That's a big deal. I appreciate it. Good information.